Carrie Underwood sat in her spacious Nashville home, holding her phone. A message from her manager read, "Invitation to live tonight. Vivian Holt wants to talk about your new album. I think she has other plans. Decide for yourself." Carrie knew Vivian Holt. Her interviews were sharp, biting, sometimes even cruel. She knew how to corner guests, creating viral moments that were discussed for weeks. Accepting the challenge meant being tested, but Carrie never backed down. She typed a short reply. "I'm in." Bright lights, the hum of the audience, Vivian's cold, calculated smile. Carrie entered the studio, her steps confident, her posture straight. The cameras captured every moment. "Welcome, Carrie," the host said, her voice hiding notes of anticipation. "I must say, you are at the peak of your career. Your new album has already topped the charts. What is it like to be at the top?" Carrie smiled. "It's a blessing. I've always dreamed that my music would resonate with people." The first questions were simple, about music, tours, balancing career and personal life. But then Vivian's tone changed. "I must ask," she said, leaning forward, "you have often expressed your position on social issues. Aren't you afraid that your views might alienate fans?" The room fell silent, waiting for the answer. This was the moment many tuned in for. Carrie calmly looked at Vivian. "I believe that honesty is not a weakness. My fans support me because they know I don't lie." Her voice remained steady, but there was firmness in it. Vivian smiled, but there was a flicker of disappointment in her eyes. The answer was confident, but did not provide the desired scandal. "Don't you think some of your views are outdated?" she added, emphasizing the last word. Carrie slightly tilted her head as if pondering the question, then calmly said, "Outdated? Interesting choice of words. Is being true to your principles outdated? Or is being yourself no longer fashionable?" The room buzzed. It was a subtle but powerful blow. Vivian barely noticeably tensed. The host tried to maintain control. "Times are changing. Maybe it's time to adapt?" Carrie slightly smiled. "Being progressive doesn't mean silencing voices you disagree with. It means being confident enough to respect them." Silence. Then applause. First a few claps. Then a wave of support filled the studio. By the time Carrie stepped backstage, her phone was already buzzing with notifications. The video of her responses was quickly gaining millions of views. So Carrie speaks, respect each other, trends in social media. Her fans, celebrities, even those who hadn't been interested in her music before, admired her resilience. Vivian, on the other hand, faced criticism for trying to put her guest in an uncomfortable position. Carrie did not respond to the attacks. She simply posted, "Respect is not weakness. It is the strength that changes the world." The interview became more than just a television episode. It inspired people to be true to themselves, and that was the biggest victory. Carrie sat in the dressing room, her fingers slowly sliding over a glass of water. She was calm, outwardly unshakable and confident, but inside anxiety churned. This interview had left a mark not only on the air, but also in her consciousness. Her team was rejoicing, her manager smiling as he read enthusiastic comments. But Carrie knew this moment was not accidental. She felt that there was something more behind it. The phone lit up with a new notification. "You inspired me, Carrie," someone wrote on Instagram. She smiled, but deep down, something troubled her. Was this moment the beginning of something bigger? Or was it just a temporary flash? She remembered how Vivian looked at her, how she tried to corner her. This was not just an interview. It was a test, and Carrie had passed it. But at what cost? Anxiety gave way to a strange mix of satisfaction and heaviness. At that moment, there was a knock at the door. Her assistant peeked inside. "Carrie, you have a call. It's important." She sighed, preparing for the next stage of the story. The way forward was clear, but it was no longer easy. Now thousands were watching her, waiting for her next step. The next day, Carrie's phone wouldn't stop ringing. Messages poured in one after another. Congratulations, words of support, invitations to new interviews. However, among all this noise were other voices, those who did not share her point of view. Critics began to attack her statements, and some media outlets interpreted them in a way that suited them. Carrie saw the headlines. Scandalous interview, courage or provocation? Zrение. Carrie Underwood идет против течения. She realized that now the focus was not on her music, but on her position. But she was not afraid. This moment became a test of her resilience. Deep down, she knew she had done the right thing. The main thing was to stay true to herself. Carrie sat down at the piano, placing her hands on the keys. Music had always been her way to make sense of what was happening. She played a few notes and then began to hum a new melody. Her creativity always came from real emotions, and now there was too much in her soul that she wanted to express. A few hours later, her assistant entered the room again. Carrie, you've been invited to a morning show. Do you want to participate? She paused for a moment, then nodded. Yes, I want people to hear my story. I'm not going to be silent. She knew that more challenges lay ahead, but this path she chose herself. The next morning, Carrie sat at a table with a cup of coffee, her gaze fixed on her laptop screen. In her inbox were several offers, from morning show interviews to offers to write a column about the power of self-expression. The world wanted to hear her voice. She took a deep breath, realizing that now her words meant more than just lyrics in a song. Whatever she said would influence thousands, perhaps millions of people. The responsibility was daunting, but also inspiring. The phone rang. Her manager. Carrie, the voice sounded excited. We have an invitation to participate in one of the country's largest talk shows. They want to discuss your interview and your position. She knew this would be another test, but now she was ready. Carrie smiled. Let's do it, she replied confidently. A few days later, she entered the studio of the new show, feeling the familiar rush of adrenaline. The host was friendly, but the audience awaited her words with the same tension as that evening. However, this time Carrie knew what she wanted. Carrie, what do you feel after everything that happened? The host asked, tilting her head. Carrie looked into the camera, knowing she was speaking not only to the audience, but to everyone watching her now. I feel that standing my ground is not just my personal struggle, it is the struggle of all who are afraid to be heard. And if I can help even one person find their voice, then it was all worth it. The room erupted in applause. Carrie knew this moment was not the last, but it became a new chapter in her story. A few days later, Carrie sat in her home, browsing the news. The interview hadn't died down, and its discussion was only gaining momentum. Each new headline analyzed her words, interpreting them in its own way. She sighed. Now every step of hers was under a microscope. Every word could be taken out of context. But the most amazing thing, people began to share their stories. Social media posts appeared with confessions. I was afraid to express my opinion, but your words inspired me. Thank you for your courage, Carrie. You gave me a voice. She realized that her words had gained an influence she hadn't thought about before. This was not just a moment in her career. It had become a movement. People were looking to her for an example, for support. The phone rang. It was her producer. Carrie, there's an offer to perform at a charity concert. They want you not only to sing, but also to tell your story. She thought about it. This was a chance to use her platform for something bigger. Let's do it, she said firmly. She understood. Ahead lay new challenges, but now she had a goal, to help people believe in themselves, as she once believed. Several months had passed since the interview, but its echoes continued to resonate in the public space. Carrie participated in several major events where her words were repeatedly cited as an example of the power of conviction. She sat in the dressing room before another performance when her manager entered with a beaming smile. Carrie, have you seen the latest news? Your interview has been included in the list of the most influential moments of the year. She put down her phone, in which she was browsing messages from fans, and smiled at her manager. I didn't do it for the ratings, she said calmly. I just wanted to say what I think is right. The manager nodded. And that's exactly why your words resonated with so many. You gave people a voice. The concert hall behind the scenes buzzed with anticipation. The audience knew tonight on stage would be not just a singer, but a woman who had inspired millions. When Carrie stepped onto the stage, the hall erupted in ovation. She took the microphone and paused for a moment, looking at the audience. At that moment, she realized this was more than her career. It was about people, about truth, about the voice of everyone who was once afraid to speak out. "Thank you," she said, smiling. "Never be afraid to be yourself." The music played, and the first chord of her new song sounded like a promise to continue fighting for truth, for respect, for the right of everyone to be heard. And at that moment, Carrie knew her story was just beginning.